Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Muskogee Creek National Council Emergency Session. Today is February the 10th, 2022. The time is 10 a.m. We're hosting this meeting via teleconference. I'd like to call this meeting to order. At this time, I would like to ask Second Speaker Robert Huff for today's invocation.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Lord, we thank you for giving us make decisions for the day. Lord, today and days like that. We ask in Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. What else, Second Speaker? Roll call, National Council Secretary Alicia Strobel.
Speaker William Lowe.
Here.
Galen Cloud.
Here.
Mary Crawford.
Present.
Yeah.
I think it should be okay.
Well, this will help.
Joyce,
them.
yeah.
All right, I know.
Joyce Deere. Patrick Freeman.
Here.
Sandra Golden.
Present.
Leonard Gouge.
Here.
Nelson Harjo.
Here.
Joseph Hicks. Joseph Hicks.
Here.
Randall, okay. Randall Hicks.
Present.
Robert Huff.
Present.
Anna Marshall.
Present.
Charles McHenry.
Here.
Thomas Hinuhola Osborne.
Present.
Darrell Proctor.
Here.
Mark Randolph.
Present.
Joyce Deere. Speaker, you have 15 present, 1 absent.
15 present, 1 absent. That constitutes a quorum. Any business conducted moving forward will be valid. I appreciate all the council representatives being on this morning. On to order of business. NCA 22-014, a law of the Muskogee Creek Nation repealing MCNCA Title 23 entitled Hunting and Fishing, Fayada, Hadam, Makwayada, and creating a new MCNCA Title 23 entitled Wildlife Code. Sponsor is Representative Leonard Gouge.
Speaker, make a motion to pass.
Representative Leonard Gouge makes a motion to adopt.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Representative Nelson Harjo Sr. Discussion. Representative Gouge.
Speaker, I want to give time to the AG's office.
Certainly. Kevin Dillinger, sir.
Yes, sir. We have the hunting and fishing code, and I think, as you realize from the title of the code, we're repealing the old code and updating it and making it more current with what is being presented today. And I think the main reason, and Jesse Allen can probably speak more about it, or Mr. Kissy, we're wanting to update this and have it in place just so we have a clear record of having an updated hunting and fishing code. And I believe the hunting and fishing code itself does closely mirror, maybe not exactly, but very closely mirrors the state hunting and fishing code. So I think that is something that's important to, in case there's any questions of, well, where did this come from? How was it developed? To say that it's based on that. It has a lot of similarities in it. I think is probably a good thing for those outside of the tribe to help them understand what our code's about. So with that, I'll, if I may, would ask you as the council to consider this and see if there may be any additional comments or thoughts on it with respect to either Mr. Allen or
Thank you, Kevin. Trenton, do you want to speak on this matter, sir? Mr.
Yes,
Kissy?
sir. Thank you, Speaker, and
Yes, sir.
thanks for getting us on the agenda today. I want to point out real quick that even though this is an emergency session, this is something we've been working on since 2017. We were taking kind of another avenue through it, which was a little bit slower, but for a few reasons, which I think everybody's aware of. It's kind of in our best interest to go ahead and update the code. And it's called a repeal and replace, but I just want to kind of put some minds at ease. There are not a ton of structural changes. The primary ones are in the administration of the code. We've been meeting with Light Horse since about 2017, the game rangers there, kind of trying to get a feel for what they are comfortable doing and what we're comfortable doing. In the former code, the game ranger was responsible for a lot of administration, a lot of administrative tasks that you would think more in line with the Division of Ag and Natural Resources, which at the time of the passage of the code, I don't think the Division of Ag was structured in the same way and that it is now. So it wasn't mentioned. A natural resources manager was mentioned, but that was the extent of it. So we've gone back and forth, and we've done a few things in the revision of the code, line by line. Much of it is still the same. There's no change to the landowner exemptions or anything like that are in the previous code. It doesn't allow non-citizens to hunt on tribal lands at all, non-native or native, either one. It's only for Creek citizens on our properties. It's not an agreement with any of the other tribes. I know there's been some of the other tribes have been in the news for, kind of working towards joint agreements, and we've been in some discussions with them, not in agreement, just before they made their announcement, just to be privy to what they're talking about. Our Attorney General's office has been involved with that more so than my department, but there have been those discussions with other tribes, but this is nothing to do with that. Or the state. The state has nothing to do with this. It's not a compact. It's no agreement with the state. Mr. Dellinger mentioned the state, and that's going to be part of what we talk about in the conservation regulations, which the code addresses. But the conservation regulations are basically the rules that are going to be promulgated and come up with annually, and the code specifies, the old code and the new code, or the proposed code specifies, that we review annually with the National Council and with Light Horse. We come up with those administratively with the Division of Ag and Light Horse, run them through Chief's office and the Attorney General's office, and then we would present those annually to the National Council for review. One thing this code does change is that our presentation is supposed to have occurred statutorily, or Light Horses in the old code, on November 30th, which is right in the middle of deer season. And so we did change that date to February 28th so that our wildlife department would make that presentation to you all in February, ahead of all the hunting seasons that come up. So we're not trying to change rules mid-season, is basically what that would amount to. And any changes would be based on science or data of conservation. Maybe we want to increase bag limits or decrease bag limits based on our population studies that Jacob, our wildlife biologist, does annually. He's been collecting that data all year. So that's one of the things that changes, but we don't mention the state of Oklahoma in our conservation regulations. We did go through, for ease of, for the citizens' sake and to protect them, we went through and made our bag limits and our seasons match the states. So there's no confusion on, can we start deer hunting in September when the state of Oklahoma can't start until October? Simple things like that. But all of the bag limits and appropriate shooting hours, legal methods of take, firearm season, archery season, all of those things. Jacob Rippey, our wildlife biologist, he went through line by line and pulled those from state codes so that they would match. And again, our aim with that is for two reasons. Number one, those decisions are made by the Department of Wildlife Conservation, or have been in the past, based off of sound, best practices in the conservation world of all the wildlife. And then number two, again, to protect citizens, to make sure they don't have to double check 2 or 3 different regulations depending on where they're at. So that was our aim with that. And again, none of this was rushed. We've been working on this. Like I said, I've been personally working on it since 2017, and Jacob's been working on it really hard for a little over a year. So, we put a lot of thought into it. I know this is an emergency session, but I just wanted everyone to know that it's not been cobbled together or rushed. This is something that's been in the works for several years. Again, the landowner exemption is the same. I can kind of quickly go through some of the changes line by line. Again, there was no mention of the Division of Ag and Natural Resources per se in the original code. So this code changes the administration, and basically it delineates between the responsibility of administration and enforcement. So enforcement would still be Light Horse, the Light Horse game ranger. All of those sorts of, enforcement activities would be responsibility of Light Horse. So my department won't have anything to do with, writing tickets and all of that sort of activity. That would be gone through the justice system, like it would with the state or with any other tribal codes. And we did go through dozens of other tribal codes and other state codes in developing this. So it's all based off of best practices and sort of industry standards. It's not things that we, made up on a whim or anything like that. But we did, we do include some things, and we have the flexibility to include some things that would be specific to the Muskogee Nation. I know yesterday we were visiting with Mr. Fife, and one of the things he brought up that's a good point is cultural things and cultural ceremonies and things that may fall outside of typical hunting seasons. And there's a portion in the current code and in the presented code dealing with licenses for gathering for ceremonial purposes, but that's an area where we have some flexibility, where we can get with our cultural preservation department and those folks and make sure that everything's appropriate, and that things that shouldn't be publicized are not publicized, because I know that's something important for our population. It's not necessarily as important for the state as some dates and things we don't necessarily want out there, and things like that. So we have a little bit of flexibility in our code to be able to do that. The administration in terms of issuing of licenses, keeping track of who has a license and when they expire, who's permitted to hunt. So we would check and make sure that every person that applies is a citizen, and that they're in good standing. So we would run all of those through citizenship and make sure that the tribal identification is valid. That's something that Light Horse, whenever we met with them the first few times, they kind of said, listen, especially this was before McGirt, so especially since McGirt, they just don't have time to cross-reference and make sure that everyone who applies and all of their children and dependents are citizens, and keep track of all that, keep a running list, issue those permits, answer questions about, which properties are appropriate. All of those things are something that Jake handles on a day-to-day basis. Jacob is a wildlife biologist, so all of the conservation activities, land and property development, food plots, biological surveys. He did several overnight surveys of deer before the deer season this year, and he's collected all that data. Those are all things that you would typically see like a wildlife biologist doing, and that's what we've been doing. So that's a big portion of the changes to the code, is delineating the administrative side from the enforcement side. And so that's a lot of what it is. It does speak to the conservation regulation process, which is it would require a separate tribal resolution, but it allows our department to meet with Light Horse to come up with the appropriate conservation regulations, which would be like seasons, bag limits, things like I mentioned before. Those are again presented to National Council for review every year and approved by tribal resolution. So this is not something that's set concrete in stone and can never be changed, and that's certainly not our intention. We want to be able to be flexible and malleable, and certainly meet the needs of citizens. The former code prohibits the selling of any wildlife, and so one thing that Jacob added to this code is to allow for the trade in furs. We have citizens that do trapping and bobcats and foxes and coyotes and things like that. The fur and hide market's not what it was, but there are still some citizens that take part in that, and so bringing our code up to date and allowing that to occur on our properties is very important. We have received a few grants for some wildlife biological research, and one of those is on wild turkeys and fitting them with GPS monitored vests and stuff. So one thing this revised code would do is update to prohibit the take of those animals, so that if you see a collared deer or if you see a vested turkey, it would prohibit the take of that animal. So that's that protects us and in our gear, which is very expensive, trying to do this research and collect that data. And then another thing that it does is it prohibits the dumping of carcasses from off of Creek Nation properties. So that's one thing that the former code did not do that this new code does, is it doesn't allow someone to shoot a deer in Henrietta and bring it to Creek Nation properties and dump it. And it also outlays where you can and cannot dispose of carcasses. If you do take an animal on Creek Nation's property, it makes sure that you're not dumping those near waterways or near dwellings, which some of our properties are close to. And so those are the main updates to the code. And I know that was really long, and I apologize for that. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have and discuss those things.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir. Zeke Fletcher, do you have some comments for the National Council, sir?
Thank you, Speaker. I was able to review the code. I don't have any substantive suggested changes, and everything looks okay to me, sir.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir. Chief Hill, would you like to make any comments on this legislation, sir?
Good morning, Speaker. Good morning, Council. Chief Hill is actually in a meeting with the Bureau of Indian Education right now in Muskogee.
Okay.
And all the tribal leaders are up there. And so I'll just make a few comments. I'm in Chief's conference room right now. We also have the Light Horse Commission here in the conference room. They're having their bi-weekly meeting, I guess, right now. So monthly meeting. And so it's just kind of fortuitous that this session's at the same time, and so they're in here listening also. We can talk about some other specifics if we want to go into executive session about whys and why we're needing this. And it kind of coincides with some things that has transpired in the last 24 hours, 48 hours or so. I think this is just something that just one small step that we need to take to where we want to be. And so I don't have any issues with it, and it's been vetted. It's been, I know Trent and his department's been working on it for a while. So we appreciate the National Council being able to meet so quickly on it.
Good deal. Thank you, Second Chief. Any questions from the council? Comments, questions?
You mentioned the executive session. Do that now or later?
We can if you choose to go into executive session.
Do that.
You got to make that motion.
Speaker, this is Sandy Golden.
Yes, Representative Golden.
I make a motion, we have executive session.
Representative Sandra Golden makes a motion to go into executive session,
Second, McHenry.
seconded by Representative Charles McHenry. Roll call vote, please.
Sandra Golden,
Yes.
Leonard Gouge,
Yes.
Nelson Harjo,
Yes.
Joseph Hicks. Joseph Hicks. Randall Hicks,
Yes.
Robert Huft,
Yes.
Anna Marshall,
Yes.
Charles McHenry,
Yes.
Thomasine Yohola Osborne,
Yes.
Darrell Proctor,
Yes.
Mark Randolph,
Yes.
Galen Cloud,
Yes.
Mary Crawford,
Yes.
Joyce Steer,
Yes.
Patrick Freeman,
Yes.
Joseph Hicks.
Yes.
Speaker, you have 15 in favor, 0 against.
15 in favor, 0 against. We will be in executive session. Time is now 10:17. Representative Golden, who would you like to be included in the executive session? Turned on. All right, thank you very much. Back to the motion at hand. Is there any final discussion on NCA 22-014? Yes, Representative Golden.
I didn't get a chance to read this really well, but I did notice that there are some questions that, well, maybe like section 101, it says the nation's natural resources manager. And I just thought maybe it should say Muskogee Creek Nation. The Natural Resources Department, other places it has an acronym of DANR, and so maybe this should be Division of Natural Resources Department in parentheses DANR. On page 3, it says section 2-104B, it says it shall not be a defense to any infraction under this code that is the alleged activity may be lawful under state law. And I just needed clarification what that means. Seems like a word's missing.
Trenton, can you discuss that, sir?
That's the same as the former code, so Mr. Dellinger maybe could untangle
Okay.
that legalese for us.
Yeah, I just think it's saying that,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Kevin.
basically it's just saying that if our law is different than the state law, that it's not a defense to say, well, state law allows it. So it's our law that matters here, and that's the law that's being followed. So that's all that's saying.
Okay, just a couple of other things. Thank you. On page 4, fishing, it says taking a fish or any variety by a hook and line, net, seine, bow, or arrow, spear, or by hand. by state law, it's against the law to stick something in the water and shock the fish and bag them that way. Is that included in here somewhere? Also on page 5, it says plant. Does that include marijuana? Are we going to include that at some point? Waterfowl. I don't know if it includes like if it's migratory birds, if it includes pheasant, quail, and I think it refers to in another part about the federal government, which is illegal to hunt eagle and hawk, and that's protected species. So other than that, I didn't really get any further than that, but those are just my, the things that I noticed or had questions about.
Kevin Tritton, you want to comment on that?
Sure. Speaker, just real quickly, Representative Golden, thanks for those questions. A lot of those would be outlined. For example, the shocking of fish, that would be outlined and would be illegal in the conservation regulations. So the wildlife code doesn't get into as many specificities with certain laws. Waterfowl would not include quail and pheasant and those things. Those would be upland birds. And we would these things up here are just definitions. So plant would include, because it says any undomesticated or domesticated. We don't want people planting any plants on our Creek Nation land. And so that basically is just prohibiting that. But the definition section just makes sure that it outlines it's all encompassing. So you couldn't plant marijuana or even a cedar tree on Creek Nation's property. That would be up to either the game rangers or the Division of Ag and Natural Resources as we manage our properties. So that's what that's outlining. And the definitions for waterfowl, those are industry standard, federally used terms to include migratory birds.
Thank you, sir. Any final comments?
Speaker, this is Kevin Dellinger. I just
Yes,
wanted to let Representative Golden know in section 4402, it references working with federal authorities, and it references for federal laws that apply, and it references the Eagle Protection Act and the Migratory Bird Treaty Act and Endangered Species Act. So those will be enforced as well.
Outstanding. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Final comments? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Leonard Gouge,
Yes.
Nelson Harjo,
Yes.
Joseph Hicks,
Yes.
Randall Hicks,
Yes.
Robert Huft,
Yes.
Anna Marshall, Charles McHenry,
Yes.
Thomasine Yohola Osborne,
Yes.
Darrell Proctor,
Yes.
Mark Randolph,
Yes.
Galen Cloud,
Yes.
Mary Crawford,
Yes.
Joyce Deere,
Yes.
Patrick Freeman,
Yes.
Sandra Golden,
Yes.
Anna Marshall.
Yes.
Speaker, you have 15 in favor, 0 against.
15 in favor, 0 against. NCA 22-014 is adopted. Next item on the agenda, announcements. Do we have any announcements from the council? Any announcements? I will say we have 1 hour left, veterans with coffee and donuts. So please get over there and finish them off. I put a pretty good dent in them this morning, so they may have a few left. Any other announcements? All right, on to adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Representative Golden makes a motion for adjournment,
Second, Thomasine.
seconded by Representative Thomasine Yohola Osborne. I would like to ask Representative Joseph Hicks for a benediction. Or excuse me, let me get a voice vote first. I'll do a voice vote for adjournment. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none. Adjournment passes. On to benediction. Representative Joseph Hicks, would you please say our benediction, sir?
Bow your heads. Keep your protecting hand over everyone still with illnesses going around, and also keep our first line people protected, and our police, nurses, firemen, and also our men and women in the military service. Lord, we just ask as we all separate ways today that you protect us and get us safely home to wherever our next destination is.
Amen. Mado. We are adjourned at 11 a.m.